Welcome to the Table Podcast series with Bridget Johnson. Each month, we give you game-changing conversations about K-12 education and leadership. Join us as top educators, field experts, and administrators share actionable strategies to transform your school community. Let's dive in.
Welcome to The Table, the podcast where student-life professionals, educators, and change-makers come together to share stories, insights, and ideas for building communities where everyone belongs. I'm your host, Bridget Johnson. Today, I'm joined by Jen Dubey and Kyle Conley. Jen Dubey is a leadership coach and facilitator with more than 2 decades of experience helping educators reflect, grow, and lead with clarity and heart. Kyle Conley is an equity-centered systems leader with 25 plus years experience designing powerful adult learning environments and global communities of practice for school leaders. Today, we're going to talk about what it really looks like to support school leaders in honest, judgment-free, community-centered ways, and the collaborative project you're launching to help make that possible. And since this conversation will be our first episode of the new year, it feels especially right to begin 2026 by centering connection, care, and the people who hold so much of the emotional weight in our schools. Welcome to the show, Jen and Kyle, and Happy New Year. How are you guys doing?
Happy New Year. Doing well, thanks. Excited to be here.
Yes,
Awesome.
Happy New Year. Thank you so much for having us. Looking forward to our conversation.
I'm so glad you're here. And so, just going to start with a grounding question for each of you. What pulled you into the work of supporting school leaders and educators? And was there a moment when you thought, this is where I'm meant to be?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. As a former principal myself, I found myself probably prematurely asked to take over and lead a turnaround effort with a capital T of a school that had been historically struggling for generations. And to be really honest, I think in retrospect, I was underprepared for that experience. I had been in the classroom and I'd done all the work, and on paper I was ready to go. But the experience of lived experiences and understanding the context was lacking. So I sort of, when I left the principalship, I really imagined that there had to be a better way of supporting principals, a better way of really tapping into an entire school leadership team instead of just the principal. And so for me, when I left the principalship, I went and I went abroad and I started working in global leadership, and I brought together a community practice. I built a community practice of school principals who had the opportunity to visit countries around the world, and we would embed ourselves for a few days in a school in one country and then go virtual and engage with one another for a few months, and then we go to a different country and explore the context
amazing.
there. And
I love it.
It was a dream job, but also just like the first time I really saw the power of a cohort and the power of a community where just the content learning isn't the primary goal, but also the building of a strong network and a group of colleagues that is there for you. That changed everything for me. So that was really the moment where I thought, this is what I want to be doing. This is the opportunity I want to bring to the school principals that feel like I felt when I was in the school building.
Awesome. And Jen, how about you? And I know you have a special furry guest there, and we are very pet friendly.
Good. Hopefully he will keep his opinions to himself while I'm sharing and off the mute. For me, in my career early on, 20 years ago, I had a chance to start coaching and developing new teachers, and spent many, many years doing that as a part of an organization where we're bringing in new teachers and really showering them with tons of support and development. And it was really when I made the pivot to being a school leader from an environment where there was a lot of external support and development for the new teachers, and then into a space where I was like, well, where's the help for me? I was going to a lot of trainings for how to implement our programs with fidelity and how to be in compliance and a lot of things around the role itself. But there was a real lack of leadership development and community of communities where I could be open and honest as a learner, learning leadership in this new lens of school leadership, where I could be open and honest about what it looked like, what I needed, and what I was working on. And I had an opportunity one of the years in that role to be a part of a collaborative cohort group put on by the Lastinger at the University of Florida. And it was a huge game changer. Suddenly I had that space to be in a room with other folks in my role, talking about our challenges, not worried about how our, the teachers we were coaching and developing and working with were going to receive what I was learning and working on. We could just be open and honest with each other as learners.
Yeah.
And from there, I was like, well, this is the kind of space that feels really necessary across. And of course, that program got cut, So you're like, how do we create having those programs and those opportunities for folks to not only be receiving the training they need, but also the spaces they need to be open and curious and honest and practice and take risks, and know that it's, not going to be kind of evaluative. So I had a chance then to do that work for the last really 10 years, like holding varieties of spaces to give educators, particularly in leadership roles, like spaces to play, spaces to try on new things, spaces to collaborate with folks across tons of content, also to get that perspective. And it's just, there's nothing like, I feel like, offering folks a space that they say at the end, I didn't know how much I needed this. And this is,
I love that.
And this is how I'm now able to go show up back in my community because of it.
Awesome. So you guys have seen so many corners of education, public, charter, independent, international. Across those spaces, what challenges are educators and leaders naming most consistently right now, in your opinion?
Okay, I'll go first.
Tyler. I'm like, either one of you can go.
Yeah, I think in this moment, and I wish that it hasn't been this long of this moment, but uncertainty. I feel like we're hearing from folks that leading, all of the things in a school system, in a school, in a year, a school year, there's so much routine and there's so much like knowns, but this moment in particular is just full of unknowns and uncertainty, and you don't know how much of what you've come to build and rely on is sustainable, is, you're going to be moving forward on. So, you're already doing that dance of holding all the tensions for everybody and pushing towards your goal.
Right.
And now the ground you're doing that on feels very shaky. So I think, for folks, it's always exhausting to kind of hold that tension in that leadership role, but particularly in these times, I think that's something that is really challenging, and folks need each other, like in that moment, like it becomes even more
for sure
that they can say,
absolutely,
trusted peers and colleagues, hey, how are you handling this? Hey, what's coming up for you? Let's talk about some things I couldn't have planned for that now I have to respond to. Yeah, I think that's a lot of what the landscape looks like right now.
Yeah, I'd build on that just a little too, Jen. I think, there's a lot of themes. I'm often, you're going to hear a few things from me sort of on repeat. One is the importance of community and in our school development and our school leadership. And so one of the things that I hear is a consistent challenge is finding ways to build meaningful engagement with the community of stakeholders that circle around a school. Hands down, I think that's one of the most important things that our school leaders need to be doing, but I don't think that we consistently have great examples or great strategies or great support in making those connections and building that shared leadership that feels really essential to me. And I think the other piece that I would just add, and I think these go hand in hand, is that it's very lonely at the top of a school. You are in So often I see, I'm also on the school board here in my town, and each of our principals is one of
One of
one.
one.
One of one, right? And so there's there and in so many districts, especially, we've done a lot of work collectively in rural spaces, and in
Mm-hmm.
and in spaces where you don't even have a horizontal colleague to be reaching out to. There's not somebody that's maybe doing something in similar work. So that one singular leader feeling lonely and isolated is a continuous challenge that I think we have to make, or to face, I should say. And frankly, I think a lot of that can be done by some more distributed leadership practices that invite community members in, and make space for collaboration with all sorts of folks that are deeply committed to students.
No, absolutely, and that it's very similar to the dean of student role. I mean,
Yes.
you're one of one on campus, and sometimes you can talk with folks and commiserate. Oftentimes you can't, and so finding that other person that you can just call up and say, "Am I crazy?" or have you handled something like this before? Like, means so much, and is so important. Is the reason why the roundtable was created, so that we could provide those connections for people, because it is lonely. It's isolate. You're on an island.
Yes.
And it's so important to have other folks that you can kind of talk with and debrief and all those
Yeah.
things for not only school health, but your health.
Hmm.
You're not healthy if you're not able to kind of have those moments to just kind of breathe and relax and not have to worry about all the things.
100%. And
So,
I think it's important to name, like, the pressure that is coming from both directions, both on deans and on school principals, right? You really are sort of stuck in this space of, being receiving all this pressure from top down
mm-hmm.
to change something, whether or not the top really understands what needs to be changed or not. They're
Right.
pretty confident that they do. And so, right, so it's a change something kind of mindset. But to do that, you've got, in a dean's role and in a school principal and in any of the leadership team, you're caring for the needs of an entire school building, right? Of
Yes.
students and of the adults, and the pressure that's coming from back up to represent them well, and to build those systems and structures that are effective, and to
Yes.
build trusting relationships and a safe culture. It puts leaders, school leaders, and in the broad term, just in a really tough position, and where it's pretty tough to breathe.
Absolutely. And that's a great segue into my next question. Burnout has been a hot topic lately. When you talk with leaders who feel overwhelmed or isolated, given all of the different pressures, given the fact that they're one of one, what do you hear underneath that? And what do you think is really going on?
My sense is, just to continue what I was saying, is that just there's so much that it makes this role nearly impossible.
Mm-hmm.
You are I felt like, I guess I shouldn't project on everyone, but who, with all of the folks that I've spoken with, we are so often as principals sort of thrown to the wolves, if you will.
Yes.
And right, and it's been, especially when you start to think these the traits, the characteristics and traits and skills that made me a successful teacher do not necessarily translate into a successful principal or a successful
Nope.
administrator. And so in that case, right, like those are different skills. Like, I was a fantastic literacy teacher, and then got to the principalship and realized that that's actually, phonemic awareness isn't what was going to turn around the school. For, my teachers had phonemic awareness. They didn't need to do that. So instead, that, this need of building support. So then I'm stuck, as a school principal, the first thing that I did is start to build that network, start to find out who is out there that can share a different perspective, who
Mm-hmm.
swims in different water, and builds those, like, pathways of new perspectives, new ideas, new skills that can be shared with me. That piece of burnout, to your question, that piece of burnout so often just comes from, um, a lack of support and a lack
Yeah.
of understanding of what makes what makes a really good school principal. And if I can just say one more thing, Jen, and then I'll pass it to you, but it's that, again, this notion that like the pressure that's coming from the top, although everyone at the top, whatever that looks like in your system, really has best intentions, they don't always have that context. They don't always understand the history and the culture of your building and the folks that you're working with on a daily basis. And so you can really go down into a tighter spot if you've got folks that are up, at the district level or the systems level who are putting pressure on you that isn't directly aligned with what needs to be changing in your school and what you recognize as a leader needs to be happening. And so I named that because one of our biggest core values is centering the expertise of the school principal. So instead of the top down saying this is what you need to be doing, saying instead what do you need to be doing and how can you build a network of people that are going to support you in that. So that
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing
answer.
that. No, it's fine. Absolutely. Jen, any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just on this idea too of expertise as well, I think there's, especially for our newer school leaders, there's this pressure of I'm leading, I'm supposed to have the answers, I'm directing,
Yes.
I can't show that I'm learning this too, or I'm seeking insight to be able to make the best decisions. I think there can be a real tricky balance that people are holding of like building trust that counterintuitively sometimes comes from engaging with curiosity and being a bit more vulnerable in your work, but you can't always do that also, especially when you're new and you got lots of demands on your energy and time. So I think that tension also leads to this feeling of isolation of like the leaders holding that for themselves and everybody else. They're thinking about the well-being of all of their staff, their kids, their community, the folks that they support and develop, and who's doing that for them. And I think a lot of them now come from like, well, I'm pouring into everybody. Who's pouring into me? Where are my people? And one of the realities, I think, and just the pressures of, how critical school leadership work is one of the pressures that comes out of that is there becomes very little time for reflective kind of work, for practice work, for learning on the job, even though you have to learn on the job. So like, what are the learning, what are the learning conditions on that job? Often the conditions for great learning aren't going to be happening in your school building or even in your district. Sometimes you need to be able to create and have an environment where you can go access, I can take some risks here. I can say a thing that I have on my heart and I need to grapple with and would not worry about being fired because of it or not being trusted because of it. So I think the isolation in a large part comes from that, holding that for everybody and just being like, where are my people doing this for me and with me? And where's the space where I can learn like a good learner does, like taking risks, trying, failing a little bit, and do that without causing harm in my community or in my school. And that's just isn't typically baked into the opportunities that most school leaders have access to.
Right. And they're not really thinking about it in that way, maybe. And so that's, a term I like to use that I've learned recently called psychological safety. And so being able to feel psychologically safe in your environment so that you can do all of those things without fear of judgment. And that's rare, especially, needing to have that space where they can be honest. And so what does a truly safe space for leaders feel like to you? And how do you create that for people who are like, oh, shoot, I don't think we have that. What do I do?
One other thing I'll add to before I love that question before jumping into that is also that I think leaders, the last ones they're going to prioritize are themselves. So
absolutely,
like with the isolation and all the things we just outlined, I also feel like the last thing the leaders that I work with and talk to say they want to do is kind of do something for themselves. They're doing it for everyone else. So there's also a bit of a I think psychological safety also includes the safety to say, hey, I need this, and it's going to make me a better leader. And so I'm going to do this, even though it might feel like optically hard to do.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that.
But Kyle, do you want to kick off thoughts on this, creating that
On psychological safety?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love the question, because I think two things. It speaks to our core need as humans. Like, we are in a human-centered business, right?
Yes.
And so the level, I think the degree to which we feel psychological safety in ourselves and in our work is the same level that we're going to pass on to the rest of our school. And there's so much. I'm actually a big proponent of really high expectations and strong accountability for our schools to make sure that all of our students are learning. And what feels like the essential missing piece is finding a way to build those high expectations in a space that is not I don't know, I guess toxic is the word that comes to mind, right? But it is psychologically safe. It is not, it's free of bullying. It's free of belittling. And so that, I love this question, because I think it's absolutely at the core and the center. And when I think about the most effective communities of learning that I've been a part of and that I've built, it comes down to being the one to model that we aren't actually the experts on everything that's happening in your building.
Right.
I got really tired of somebody coming in from the outside and saying, well, you know what your problem is? If you just did, and you fill in whatever blank, and that blank changed every year, right? It would be somebody new coming in with some new idea. And where I get excited, and the space that we try to build, is one that says, actually, the contextual understanding, which is the foundation for good leadership, understanding the context you work in, is something that the school leaders hold for themselves, that they hold most tightly. They have the tightest pulse on what is happening in their culture and their system and their community. And that's what you build on. You don't come in from the outside and say, let me tell you how to do it. You talk to the leader and you build up what they know and the expertise that they have internally by exposing them to new ideas, by pushing their thinking and coaching them through a process that helps them recognize their own expertise.
Yes.
And so, our for example, the reason that we built Building Leaders, and the reason that we're doing what we're doing, is that we both have come to this work to say, we believe in our school leaders. We believe in the expertise of the leadership team. We believe in the expertise of the teachers. What has to be in place is that psychological safety enough to say, what is in there in your expertise? What is it that we can pull out, and by sharing new ideas, by pushing your thinking in a new direction to try something new? That's where the real, I think, the most important learning happens, because it allows a leader to maintain true alignment to their own core values, right? You're not coming in with someone else's core values or someone else's motivation and saying, let me impose this on you, but instead, let me help you identify your true north, right? Your North Star, and let's help you work towards that. That feels very different. And it is a shift that
it is a shift.
I think Jen and I will say again and again, and so will Dr. Rao when you meet her, that the most important thing we can do is to uplift instead of push down. And
yes.
that's at the heart of what we're doing.
I like that. Uplift instead of push down. That's a good one.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Jen, any other additional thoughts?
Co-sign all of that. And I would just add for the programming that we're offering and just the unique space I've been able to be in for the last 10 years, there's also something to being able to be outside of the everyday for folks helps to bridge into that vulnerability and that risk taking. So what I mean by that is, the spaces that we hold are not in any way, shape, or form evaluative. We're not your employer. We're not credentialing you. We're not giving you a grade. Like, you have opted in to a community. Everyone here has said they want to learn, and they want to learn in alignment to their leadership and to their authentic self. And they want to be able to do that in community. And so when you start with that kind of container, it also creates a much, I won't say easier. Well, I guess easier. It's a more natural runway then to spaces where folks are like, yeah, I'm going to like tell you the really hard thing I'm doing, and then practice that speech I'm going to give at the team meeting, and you're going to give me feedback on it. And I can do that when I'm not worried about it getting back to my supervisor. I'm not worried about it getting back to the teacher that I'm like, trying to figure out how to coach up and or maybe coach out, so I think there's, in my experience, there's also something really special to just being like naming the value of like, sometimes you literally need that space, not like the proverbial space we're talking about, but like,
right. No,
like,
a real one.
We're here to convene, to support, to develop, and to like allow you this practice. No grades will be given.
Yeah. No grades will be given. And so
given.
I think that that's a perfect time, because I didn't introduce you as the Building Leaders team. I thought we would kind of build up to, and you've used the word build so many times, like, perfect, build, build, build. So let's talk about your new organization that you're launching, Building Leaders. Tell us about it.
Happily. I mean, first of all, do not miss like what we think is like the greatest double entendre of a business name ever, right? The Building Leaders, like that. I think it was Jen's idea, and I couldn't have gotten more excited. I still hold tightly to that. But Building Leaders is we are bringing these experiences of having become conveners over so many different spaces to the school leadership team and to school principals. And so, very concretely, we have 2 tracks of offerings that we're putting forward, and one is an on-site 3-day school visit to see an exceptional school principal and an exceptional school doing exceptional things, and going into their school, spending a few days embedded, learning from the context, learning from one another. And then the second track is a long-term community of practice cohort engagement of roughly a year. It's bookended as well by 2 on-site school visits. So both build on an experience that you have, together in a place, and then build a cohort of colleagues that are there and available to support you moving forward. So that's those are our 2 big offerings. But Jen, we've also got a couple other things. I don't know if you want to add to anything I just shared.
Sure. Yeah. I would just add that I think the components that go into our programming, and these are kind of our kickoff offerings, right? It's like, what can we do sitting in that space of helping people with isolation? We talked a lot in the previous questions on like the isolation and the burnout that comes from like the leader needing space to learn and grow too, and how they create that in a world where they're holding so much through uncertain times. But there's also isolation from other models, from other approaches, from different perspectives. And so one of the major reasons why we founded Building Leaders is Kyle, Kalpana, and myself have all just had the privilege of being across a real array of contexts. For me, that looks like in the United States, being across, doing a ton of work with rural communities, doing work across the country for leaders all across the country, bringing them on school visits, bringing them on together in cohorts, convening folks, super diverse backgrounds, contexts, et cetera, and allowing that space to not only be a place for building community and learning and growing, but also like having access to what they're doing in, rural Idaho, and how that compares to what's happening in the work I do in New York City, or, any number of crossovers. And so it's, this isolation that we're addressing is not just with the learning itself, but with the perspectives and the models and the approaches, and giving folks a chance to get out of their everyday, Go be in community with folks that get it and see, reflect, do something that really allows them fresh perspective, fresh ideas, new, fresh next steps that they can then make meaning back in their own communities. So we're super excited about the school, both those first core programming, but like underneath all that is that spirit of like, how can we show up to help you have access to that unique, fresh perspectives and the learning experience and community that allows you to turn it around into something super meaningful for your community.
Awesome. And I love that you guys are being intentional about cohort diversity. What does that add to the learning experience? What changes when the room is truly diverse, in your opinion?
I mean, everything, right? This is, thank you for naming that, because Jen and I, like, just to speak really frankly, we have reflected a lot on the role that we, especially as white former school leaders of a certain age, if you will, what it is that we bring to the table and what our role is. And we have committed to this notion that we aren't centering our voices. We aren't centering our experiences or our expertise, but instead building a very intentionally diverse cohort and allowing that to be the expertise in the room and to center and elevate and amplify the voices of our participants. So, a great example is this is an international cohort approach. We're really very serious about pushing, I can tell you, having worked in so many different countries, and bringing large groups together from all around the world, the most hesitant participants were always our Americans. I'm just going to name that. This was, we would be in some amazing, I don't know, I'd be in Sofia, Bulgaria, right? And we'd have a large group from Asia, from Africa, from all around the world. And we were like pulling teeth to get the Americans even to just come and accept and name that there's something to learn from Sofia, Bulgaria, right? Like that mindset is something that we are intentionally pushing by exposing and introducing people into these really different cohorts and diverse cohorts, I should say. And just to name, like, just to put a really fine point as well, and then Jen, I'll pass it on to you. But when Jen was talking about the need to get physically away from your space, this is very much a research-based approach, in that if you want to change somebody's mindset, you almost, like, mindsets are so often, especially from adults, they can be very fixed.
Yeah,
it can be very difficult to get someone to challenge. Even when I'm working with teachers, right? I'm trying to get them to see that maybe that student isn't just being difficult. Maybe there's a different way of approaching it, right? Like, this mindset that we carry with us is really often very fixed. And when you go into a different space and you create a disorienting experience, it actually allows the brain to open up to new mindsets, to challenge things that it always believed. And I felt like, and I feel like so often in school districts and systems leadership, we're sort of all swimming in the same water, right? Whatever message is there is being passed around within, even from school to school within a district, because you're still dealing with similar challenges or similar geography or similar approaches or similar curriculums, right? Or even just similar message from the superintendent. And by leaving that and going and creating a disorienting experience, we open up our minds to new mindsets, new ideas, and new perspectives. And so we do that both geographically and also in the diversity of a cohort.
And that's scary for people. They're not,
it's super scary.
Like, yes, I want to be in a disorienting experience. Sign me up.
I know.
But it's so
some
important.
People, it's so important. It's so, for some of us, some people do. Yeah. But it's not till you get there. I will tell you just, quickly, or maybe it's not quickly, I don't know. But when I look at, some of the strongest, collegial relationships that I have witnessed, that I've been fortunate enough to help build. I see, a principal from Denver, Colorado, who has really become very close networked support colleagues with someone from Pune, India.
Mm.
And when we went and visited schools in Denver, you could see Raman, the Indian leader, just looking around going, oh my gosh, and really being challenged with all this instructional leadership piece and the role that Scott was playing as the Denver principal. And then when we left and then we went to India, seeing the way that Scott all of a sudden went, wait a second, I had never thought about the role that the community is playing and how these systems are impacting. Like, it was just an entirely different way of educating children, right? And so that's what I mean by disorienting experiences. When you get outside of what you're expecting to see, you really do open your eyes up to entirely new approaches.
Yeah, I love that so much. Absolutely. So
Sorry,
I want
Jen,
to
I don't
kind
know
of
if I talked too much.
No, you're
You
fine.
had
Jen,
something.
is there anything
Okay.
you want to add? Because I also want to go back just because we've talked about kind of, building leaders and talking about the team
Mhm.
and things that we need to do for ourselves. I want to go back to the individual, especially if there are folks out there who are struggling and like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know what to do. Like, this all seems so overwhelming. We want to give people hope and some words of encouragement. And so, what, Jen, would you say to the leader listening today who feels tired or alone? How would you encourage them?
Yes, I think a few things. First, kind of picking up where we were just talking about, as Kyle was sharing, it's always strange to me on these experiences how much folks get out of seeing that we cannot possibly find a place to take you where they have it all figured out. Like, we are going to
Right.
places and we connect, we see schools and we meet leaders and they're inspiring and there's bright spots and they're sharing. And then they're also like, and here's what's super hard. And here's what I'm working on. And here's what we haven't figured out yet. And the room just breathes a sigh of relief and are like,
Mm,
me too.
thanks.
Hey, like, we can do this,
Right.
because I've seen the bright
Yes.
spots and then I've heard from you that that's not the full story all the time, every day, and that you haven't arrived fully at your destination. That's the nature of the work we're doing. So it is incredibly validating for people to hear that from each other, and then even more so to like see that and have a really immersive experience that's inspiring to them but also validating. So the first thing I'd say
Yeah.
is validating that, like, yes, this is a hard and lonely job, and it is right that folks hit the wall at times and feel like, I don't know how I can keep doing this, or have, imposter syndrome about what they are doing really well. So I think like that, just the validation piece, it can be really, really huge. I think to be more concrete to the question about like, how do you help someone who's in that spot? I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? Because I feel like I was.
Yeah, no, and you're fine because you had started to answer the question just in terms of like what's the first step you take when you're feeling like this is
Yeah,
so overwhelming and I don't know, like I can't go, I don't think I can go on. I believe I've hit the wall.
right.
How would
Okay,
you
so
encourage them to start?
it's back to that. I would encourage folks in that moment to first like breathe. Uh,
Yes.
breathe, reflect, have a moment of what are the things that you are doing really well and that are going well for you, because those are often not being highlighted or reflected on enough because we're so driven by what we
Mm-hmm.
want to achieve. We tend to run right past the things we're achieving. And I'd really encourage people to like get in community, you know,
Yes.
phone a friend, reach out, make a connection. If you're not sure or you don't feel like you have those people in your network, find folks like us who can help you get into community with folks that are in similar roles, because you might feel alone, but you're not alone.
Not
Uh,
alone.
and we can, let's help people be in conversation and community around the parts of this that are the hardest things to do, which is often, the emotional
Yes, so important.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And so, as we think about the future of student life, leadership development, educator well-being, we've talked about like it's tough, it's hard right now. But what gives you hope right now in this current landscape?
I look to the global landscape, to be honest,
Hmm.
right now for hope. That is where I am finding most of my hope. I always find hope. And just to like add on to Jen's suggestion about if there's a principal that's, I think the obvious solution is go into a kindergarten classroom, right?
Oh.
That's like, right, like go and remind yourself of why you're there. So when I am looking for hope, I find it by looking at the kids and the students and the lives that you're having an impact for. Um, that 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 just feels essential. And I think that, so much is happening on the global stage. This
Hmm.
is an exciting time, really within the last 10 years. So many countries have really started opening their eyes to the inequities in their educational system. And that is one of the constants that, when we talk about building community and we talk about finding colleagues that are sharing what you're going through, this is the narrative that we are all in a moment right now of saying, wait a second, these our systems, our education systems defend themselves and their inequity fiercely. And so what I find hopeful is that we are acknowledging that and we are
Hmm.
taking steps forward as a collective, as humanity, to say there's a better way to educate kids, and this is how we do it. And I just would say one final thing. And this is maybe a combination of what I would recommend and where I'm finding hope. I'm finding hope in our communities. I'm finding hope in the reimagining the role that community plays in our education.
Hmm.
And by thinking very intentionally about meeting with community members and stakeholders to find out what it is that is motivating them, you find out that you are on the right track or you can course correct. And a quick story I often tell is I was working in with a community in Puebla, Mexico,
Hmm.
and when we had a parent listening session, they said, you need to understand our kids are graduating from our local schools without the skills to qualify for the high paying jobs at the BMW
Mm.
manufacturing plant just down the road. And so our kids graduate and then they're forced to either take lower paying career paths or they're forced to leave the
Yeah.
community and go live somewhere else. And
Hmm.
so having that conversation and bringing the school leaders and the policymakers into one place together to say, this is what the community needs. This is what you're offering them. Let's course correct and find a way to offer those STEM classes, offer that, those experiences that students need. That's where I find the hope. I think
Mm.
this is the first time we're really doing a much better job of listening to communities and reimagining the role that they play in determining the outcomes for their students.
I love that. Jen, how about you? Where do you find hope?
Cosine, cosine, cosine. The community of approach, and the places that come top of mind for me are like it is in. I find hope in one these like incredible leaders that I know are out there doing this work.
Yeah.
And also seeing like innovation come from a place of purpose driven curiosity versus I think what gives me a lot of hope is knowing, and I've seen this in so many communities that we visited over the last 10 years, where communities are doing exactly what Kyle just named. They're saying, what is the purpose of education? What does that mean for us in our place in this community?
Hmm.
And how do we then live into that vision for our kids through what school is? And
Yeah.
I've just had an opportunity to see so many incredible bright spots come of that, like Edgecombe County in North Carolina, the Capho Community School in New Mexico, and on and on. And like on a really like literal response to the question, what's giving me hope
Hmm.
right now? We have just lined up our first school that we're visiting, which has an
Woohoo!
incredible. Yes, it has an absolutely incredible story of place and founding. It's 10 years in to existing and has just has a graduating class, is serving their community, is getting incredible results, and has a leader who can like reflect all of those practices and also like what's hard and what they're still working on. So I actually like in the last week got a lot of hope from learning more about that
That's
school.
awesome.
And it's someone who I've kind of come up with in my own leadership. And so it's very exciting to know like it's out there. The bright spots are out there.
It's out there. It's happening.
The hope I get too from all the leaders I've worked with over the years is knowing that there are folks out there who are like, they're going to do whatever it takes and they're doing it. And yes, we're going to talk about how to support them doing it in a way that doesn't burn them out. But knowing that is who we're talking about. We're talking about school leaders, passionate, committed,
nice,
like dedicated, creative, box breaking, very gives me a ton of hope.
Yes, I love that. And so, as we think about wrapping up today, what do you want listeners to carry away from this conversation? What are the takeaways today?
The key takeaway, if nothing else, is to Jen's previous comment. If you are a school leader that is feeling isolated, please reach out. Feel free to look beyond your immediate, I don't know, fishbowl of water that you're swimming in, if you'll allow me to maintain that analogy, because there are different ways of approaching the same challenges. And so if I could encourage anything, it would be to diversify your perspective and your ideas, and to go outside of what you've always known to find new ways of doing things.
I love that. And Jen, how about you? Any takeaways that you want to make sure that people are kind of keeping in mind as we wrap up our conversation today?
Just that you are not alone, and folks are there to support and work with you, and to also cheerlead you, and to help you see the incredible things that you're doing every day that you're probably not giving yourself enough credit for. You're not alone. Let's get in community. And also, like to Kyle's point, like some of that might be, from what we're doing, like we're developing these spaces based on what we've heard over the years and seen with folks, but we're also like here to be creative, open-minded partners for folks as well, So
yes.
If you're like, I'm not sure who that community is or what that thing is, like there are folks out there, and we are some of them. Connect with.
Awesome. Yes. And so with that said, one last plug for Building Leaders. Tell us again what Building Leaders is and does, and how they can get in contact with you.
Go ahead, Jen. This time it's your turn.
Okay.
I answered.
Yeah. So great. So Building Leaders, we are supporting school leaders and aspiring school leaders and folks who are doing this critical work by bringing them together in communities of practice, helping them get out of their everyday environment into new schools and perspectives and places to learn and reflect, and to bring back practices for their own leadership and practices for their schools. And we are passionate about doing that, and really just excited for folks. So the first, in terms of getting in touch with us, the best way is to visit our website. building-leaders.org is where you're going to find all the good stuff and in particular, in the new year, we are launching our first school visit. So you can find all of the details there of how to sign up and the dates and where we're going, which, like I shared earlier, is going to be incredibly inspiring. So we're looking forward to bringing folks together on that experience.
Awesome. So important to build community, especially in this day and age. Jen and Kyle, thank you so much for today. This was awesome. Excuse me. I am so glad we had the opportunity to talk today, and also to kind of amplify what Building Leaders is doing. So thank you so much for that. And Happy New Year again.
Happy New Year. Thank you so much for having us. It was really fun.
Absolutely. And thanks for pulling up a chair at the table today. I hope this conversation gave you something to think about, or maybe even something to try out in your own community. If you're enjoying the table, don't forget to subscribe, share it with a friend, or leave us a comment. It really helps us. It really helps more people find us. And as always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time at the table. Have a good one.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Table Podcast Series. Is your student life program delivering on your mission? Our new K-12 student life assessment moves you beyond anecdotes to evidence-based decisions. Through comprehensive stakeholder surveys and expert analysis, you'll get concrete insights across 8 essential dimensions of student life, from culture and wellness to staff effectiveness and resource allocation. We're seeking founding partner schools to be the first to experience this transformative assessment process and help shape the future of student life evaluation. Today's episode was hosted by Bridget Johnson in conversation with Jennifer Doobie and Kyle Conley. Produced and edited by Andrick Sigmund and music by PremiumBeat.com. For any questions, contact information can be found in the episode description. And, as always, thanks again for listening.